Today I'm going to show you a trout streamer. This is a very simple and effective fly. I don't go crazy, I'm tying a lot of these for guided trips, so simple is easy. And this actually resembles kind of a smolt or a bigger par. It fishes really well in the spring, probably like in the early month of May, especially if we have, spring rains or runoff and the water's high. So we're going to start, this is just a 2461 Daiichi #1, and I just put a little, basically just a 5.5 millimeter cone head in the front. That's going to drop my fly. Usually when I'm fishing these, I'm fishing them on a 200 or 240 grain sink tip. So I slide the cone on, and then I'm just going to do a really good thread wrap. And then all I'm going to use a white rabbit strip. So I'm going to tie this in by the tail, and basically I want to make my tail the length of my shank of my hook. So I'm coming from my eye to the bend. You could see when I tie this rabbit strip on, I want to tie it on so basically all the fibers are coming forward, like so. You can see they kind of lay themselves back. So I'm just going to come back here. And give it a good cinch. This too, you want a heavier thread. This is a black 140 ultra thread. And what I like to do, sometimes with this rabbit twist, sometimes at the front of it, I'll just take my scissors and I'm just going to trim that tip off, just like that. Get that little twist out of there. For the body, we're just going to bulk up the body enough to take up space, basically. So we're going to use some ice dub pearl hairline dubbing, and you could dubby loop it, but I'm just going to just whip it right on my thread. And then what we're going to do is we're going to just pull this rabbit forward to the eye. And we're just going to tie that in right. So the biggest key, we're adding a lot of stuff to the front of this fly, so we want to leave a lot of space. And then the next process is we're going to take a piece of olive marabou and we're going to palmer this in the front, kind of making a collar. So we're just going to tie it in by the tip, kind of like what we do with steelhead swing flies. And we're just going to give it a few wraps, just kind of working it with our fingers. And this will just give us even a little bit more movement to that fly. I've actually swung this fly too, and it works good swinging. For all you guys that like to do a little trout spay in the spring, this would be a great fly to swing. Not only strip, but swing. Swinging, I find I kind of throw it towards the bank, and I'll give it a couple pops, a couple strips, get it fluttering and let it sink, and then I'll just let it swing. And then give it a couple twitches before you bring it into recast as it's dangling on the hang down below you. And then we're going to take it and just pull it back and kind of tie it off. So next we're going to add this polar flash, kind of an olive and a gold pearl type hue to it. It's number 2008. I like using this stuff on a lot of flies because it's like its own material. Like you could just make streamers almost like bucktail stuff using this because it's a little stiffer fiber than like your Flashabou. But we're not going to use a ton of it. Less is more. We're just going to basically take like a matchstick width, and we want to lay that over, just over the marabou. We don't want to overcrowd the rabbit. We want that rabbit to be kicking and fluttering in the back of this. So we're just going to lay it just a little bit over the marabou. And we're just going to do one. If the water was dirty, I'd recommend, folding it over and giving it more bling, but we're just going to give it a little bit because the other color I like to add after this olive is I like to add a couple strains of the pearl, which is almost kind of pink and silver hue to it. And I'll do the same thing. So the number on this is 2001, and this is polar flash also. So I'm just going to take a little bit of this And same thing, just kind of put it over top of the olive. And I find these two colors together work really good, even with an olive fly, like straight up olive. So yeah, pretty simple. Next I'm going to throw in a little red throat. And I'm going to use just some ice dub red. And I'm going to get a little chunk of it. And what I want to do is the easiest way to tie it in, because you want it off the bottom, is I'm just going to tie it like this, give it a couple light cinches, and then I can kind of work it around like this so it's on the bottom. And then I'm going to pull it back and tie it off again. And then we'll just trim it to size. So it just gives it a little bit of red throat, like a wounded baitfish, something these fish can key in on. And then I'll just cut a little bit because I don't want to overcrowd the hook. So I'll just trim it up and then I'll wrap it a little bit more. And then what I'm going to do is make kind of a baitfish head or a sculpin head on this, because that'll give it its kickback when we hit that water right off the bank and give it that first strep or that first pop. And for this I use the Sanyo laser dub. This is a light olive color. You can mix it up. You could use white, olive, tan, but I'm just going to get a pretty good chunk of it, and we're going to kind of tie this on like we do for our steelhead flies. So I'm just going to put it, cinch it all the way around the hook and give it a couple good wraps with my thread and cinch it down. And I'm just going to pull up on it and trim it a little bit and kind of pull this extra stuff off this end, give it a little trim even, and then just kind of work it back with my fingers. So this is going to give it kind of that baitfish head or sculpin head. And I kind of trim it so it's tapered. Like if you ever look at especially a sculpin, its head is kind of real thick at the end and then kind of tapers to its body. And then what I do, because you usually always have some play, I want to trim a little bit of this bottom part so I don't overcrowd or my red flashabou. And then what I'm going to do, because you can see you always have a little play in there, and I want to snug that up so that cone's not moving too much. I'm just going to dub some of this on here and pull it back and just kind of work it in just like that. Simple and effective. You could tie lots of these. You can mix up your colors. I've done well with yellow and tan, black and copper, but this one seems to be one of the better colors, like if you're going to fish this in the spring. And then I got that kind of tight like there, and that's going to sink that fly a little faster too because I tapered it. Kind of trim it up a little bit on both ends here. So you got yourself a simple trout streamer. Simple and effective.
If you enjoyed this video and would like to see more of this type of content, please consider hitting the like button and subscribing to this channel. Good luck fishing!